I was sort of following whatever my friends did. Like I'd show up at the
Yeah.
races, but I didn't even really know anything about them. Like I knew where to send my money to sign up. I don't know. It's way different than now, where like when I show up to a race, like I understand what the course looks like, what's all the details.
Right.
Maybe that's just being a naive kid. You're like, well, I don't know. I just run.
Hello, family. Welcome to another episode of the Live Room Ballad Show. I'm your host, Kenneth. Today, my guest, co-host, like I said, a good friend, even though it's been a short while since I know her. I met her during running a course. I believe it was my first or second Unity run I've been to. Like in November, December, when I ran across this young lady. She definitely, since I know her, she definitely one of the coolest and one of the realest person I've been around. So family, let's welcome my guest co-host, the ambassador of Black Girls Run San Diego, Miss Ciara. She just tell me her last name, I'm not gonna forget already. Iglehart, or AKA C.
Yeah. Hey, C. Hey, y'all. How's it going? Thank you for having me, Kenneth. This is just an honor and a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. I've been seeing all of your, shows, and I think you're doing an awesome, fantastic job with everybody. And
thank you.
Your energy just out in the community is just, I match it. So that's why you like one of my favorites, because I look at us crazy and I'm like, yo, this is just how we are. So I don't even.
So we're down. Yeah, no doubt. Glad you was able to jump on,
Yeah.
Definitely. And so I kind of losing my voice just a little bit. It's all good. But and so saying that, today's guest is a gentleman who I both met in person for the first time a few weeks ago, and he's a visitor to San Diego. He knows strangers in San Diego and in the single trail running community. Quite a few people, I think, in San Diego know who he is and know about his work out on the trails. It was a privilege to have the opportunity to hang out with him and get to know him just a little bit more. I know more about his life outside as a running career, I might say. He's a world-renowned photographer out on the trail. Also, he's an usher, endurance athlete, a former teacher, and he kind of a foreign musician also. I like to say that now. We still have a deep love for music. And I have a conversation we have, And so it's not something we both have in common outside the trail running world is music, the love of music. I think C also loves music also.
Yeah.
And I believe he truly lived a life, step into the unknown, unexpected to find his calling and running with it all over the world. So family, once again, let's welcome my new friend, the usher runner, the usher photographer, and so much more, Mr. Howie Stern photo. You got to put that photo in there. You want to get confused with the other Howard Stern.
That's right. I don't want to get confused by the other Howard Stern out there.
I was just telling Kenneth about that. I said, you know what? He has a very common name, so we need to put, I don't know what we need to put on the name, an extra E or something. But
it makes it easy to remember my name, because usually it's a good icebreaker, because some people will be like, oh, have you heard of the radio guy? I'm like, yes I have.
Right.
So, but it's a pleasure to be on the show, and thank you so much. And it was an amazing trip the other week to meet everybody and run with everybody and take some photos. Yeah, it was very cool. Different way for me to see San Diego, because I'm used to coming down and usually going out to shoot a race somewhere, maybe like Cuyamaca or this is a totally different experience. It was really, really fun.
Glad you enjoy yourself. Yeah. So I think since the baseball season I think C is up to bat right now.
I'm up to bat. Let's go. Always ready. But so Howie, again, just thank you for coming out, you know, with us and actually running with us. We really appreciate that. Like, you don't even know. That's what we want. Like, we want you to come out, run with us, hang with us, chill with us, get to know us as human beings and people, and just the running community. You know, Instagram is like a whole nother thing. It's like, you know, you can know anybody on Instagram, right? But somebody in person and you run with them and you sharing your stories. It's just something special about, you know, bonding and building that relationship. So again, thank you for doing that with us. Because you could have just came out and shot some pictures. I mean, and that's it.
Getting to run with everybody, coming down with Maggie, like, I mean, ultimately it's what it's about. It's like I want to capture reality, but that is if I get to know people, and I'm a runner first, so the community has always been way more. That's the first thing, and making those connections, because then once you do it through a lens, it's a different world, and you're not just trying to capture a picture, but you're trying to actually capture somebody's personality or something that you know about. You know, it becomes personal.
Right. So again, thank you. I want to kind of just dig a little into your background and kind of ask you, you know, who was the Howie, you know, before college, before this whole trail running thing? Like, who was the little boy? Was you the little boy picking your nose in class? Like, I don't know.
I was the super, super shy kid that, like, when I was really young, that usually the kids picked on just because I was quiet. But I think in high school, like in middle school, I started to really have an interest in music. I mean, I started in elementary on trumpet. I'm like when I was 7, but by middle school, you start to like understand, popular music and rock and what, stuff that actually you like. And, I got into drums, I think in 8th grade. In 9th grade, I started on guitar. And by 11th grade, I was playing guitar in the clubs in Hollywood. So music was sort of my life. I went, I was a strong C student. It was like, and my dad would always be like, "Have you done your homework?" I'm like, yeah, sure, I've done it, but meanwhile, I've got a guitar in my hands. But my basic daily existence in high school was I'd come home from school, I'd play drums for like 2-3 hours until my dad came home from work, and guitar the rest of the night. And it worked out pretty well in high school. Like I said, I mean, to have my first gig at it was at the Whiskey, actually. Okay. And I was 16 years old, so I was pretty excited. And my mom loved it. And my dad, all he could do is like, look at all these long-haired freaks. Is this what you want to do with your life? I'm like, yeah. So it was always, kind of that battle between, my mom wanted me to do whatever. Every time my dad went out of town, my mom, would buy me a drum set or buy me a guitar, and dad would come home like, what the hell is this? So my mom was like the enabler. And my dad, I mean, I guess he supported it since he ultimately was paying for it, but he wanted me to be an accountant. I'm like, I want to do my passion, but but like in high school, athletically, I really wasn't, I hated running. I loved skiing. That was about the only thing I was like crazy about. And I liked ski racing. But yeah, I was generally in high school, I was definitely the quiet kid. Nobody ever knew I'd play guitar or something until they saw me on stage, and they're like, whoa, where did that come from? Because it's just, not that I was crazy on stage, but I was really into like the technical playing. Like I wanted to be really good on my instrument. So but it wasn't until college that I started to explore like more of my athletic side. Like I took 4 years of photography in high school, but I don't really know why I did. I think I had a friend who was into photography, so I just did it because it seemed interesting, and it was like, I don't know, it was a fun class.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no aspiration whatsoever to do anything with it. Like I took pictures of my dog or whatever they asked us to take pictures of, you know.
You mentioned the instruments and you playing. What did you guys have, a band, or did you like a band name, or did you have a show?
I mean, I had a bunch of different bands. I had that band that played in the clubs. Yeah, we were definitely hard rock. We had a really good singer, and like me and the bass player were the youngest. He was 16, but the singer was like 24 and the drummer 4. I think we were called Aurora. I don't know. It just came to me. And then I had other bands. Like I had other friends that I jammed with. My other band, I all played drums on, oddly enough. And, you know, I played a lot of high school parties and stuff, you know, where you're like 20 minutes into it and then all the cops show up because, you know, all the neighbors complain or something like that. But I played a little classical guitar just by myself, but I was always a band player. I liked, you know, whether it was jazz or rock, you know, something that kind of hit you in the chest or made you move. I was happy.
Take me to the point of, wow, like I want to be an athlete. Like what was the transition like in your college years? You know, like what was the point or the moment that happened? I was like, you know what, I want to, you know, try this out.
Yeah, well, it kind of started from the skiing. Like my first semester in college, I had a friend from high school who was in one of my classes, and he's like, Howie, you should join the ski team. You'll get to ski all the time. And nobody else in my family skied. So I was like, oh, well, shoot, that would be great. And so I started ski racing for my college, and we raced up in Mammoth, even though I went to school in Southern California.
Yeah.
And somewhere around second year, like, and preface it, when I was in high school, I was like 50 pounds heavier than I am now. I was like 215 or something. And when I was in college, you know, on the ski team, I was a good skier, but I was getting my ass kicked, like in the race courses. And I think during my second year, I noticed that all my friends who were beating me, they were all triathletes. And somewhere like, I think the second semester of my second year, my parents had moved back east and left me on my own. And so they would just send me, you know, like a check every month to live off of, pay my rent and eat. Mm-hmm. And I decided, well, if you buy a dozen bagels on Monday, you can make that last till Friday with a can of Hawaiian punch. And then I can take all that money I was supposed to spend on food and spend that to go to Mammoth and ski. So in one semester, I lost like 50 pounds because I was not eating, I guess. And that's that summer, I was like, well, maybe I should try triathlon next year, because like all my friends who are way better skiers, they're all triathletes. So maybe getting in shape in the off season will do something. So when I went back home that summer to my parents' house, I just started running around their neighborhood, and I'd run for like a half hour or something like that. And I kind of hated it just because I guess it was hard. But slowly over time, yeah, I just started to, I don't know that I ever enjoyed running there. When I got a bike, I loved cycling. Like I was pretty good on a bike, and swimming, I turned out to be decent. And the run, I just tolerated because it was part of triathlon.
Yeah.
But once I got into that, the very next ski year, yeah, I destroyed all my friends. and yeah, they never beat me again, except maybe in giant slalom. But yeah, it was I guess somewhere when I was like 19 or 20 is when I really got into like endurance sports. And I've always been, oh, go ahead.
No, Sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I've always been a trail runner, because even in college, where everybody would go to run, we're just like the trails, like 10 minutes from school, just because running on the roads, you'd have to deal with traffic lights, and just going on the trails, you know, you can go run for a half hour, an hour. I mean, back then, to me, an hour run was like, you know, you might as well run to the moon. That was like a long run, but
Right.
um
Right. Would you say that, you know, you losing that weight and, you know, you trying that out kind of built your confidence to compete and beat your friends, and then that was kind of like, okay, I'm in this? Or like, do you feel like your weight was a key factor to you continuing your triathlon activities?
it was an interesting thing. Like, I think initially, like, because I was so shy and just not confident, because I was always used to being like the last kid picked on a team. And, you know, unless it was something like football where I could carry people on my back when I'm running with the ball, because I was just a big guy. But when I had that one year in skiing, after I lost all the weight and I was now fit from triathlon, and I was skiing really well, it was a weird feeling to be like at the top of the course and hear people behind you talking like, oh, and pointing to you going, that's the guy I want to beat. I had never had in my life where I had the target. They said, you know, like, you got the bullseye on your back. I'm like, that was a really weird feeling. Now in triathlon, like I said, I was not really a good runner. So I wasn't really racing triathlon to you know, to win. I just enjoyed it. I think I just enjoyed, you know, all the training was really fun, because it was, you know, a fun group of people to swim with and bike with and run with. And the races were just kind of fun, but it's almost like I was sort of following whatever my friends did. Like, I'd show up at the races, but I didn't even really know anything about them. Like, I knew where to send my money to sign up. But I don't know, it's way different than now, where like when I show up to a race, like I understand what the course looks like, what's you know, all the details.
Right.
Maybe that's just being a naive kid. You're like, well, I don't know, I just run. You know, there's a hill, I run up it. But I only really did triathlon probably till I was 25, and got way into rock climbing, and then I dropped all my endurance stuff when I got into climbing. It kind of took over. Yeah.
So you drop everything, the triathlete, and so before the ultra trail running world, you was into rock climbing. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that indirectly led me to ultras. Because when I got climbing is kind of interesting, because it made me, not made me, but I got so into that I stopped running, biking, swimming. It also led to my first divorce. Because grew so apart. Like, I was so into climbing and she was still into like cycling and swimming. And but I had a climbing partner that had when I remember we used to climb up in the San Gabriels at Williamson Rock, which is unfortunately closed now because of the mountain yellow-legged frog. But he had a license plate frame on his car, and it said Western States 100-mile endurance run. And I was like, what's that? And he told me about it, and but it still didn't really register. And he had done it, and he was a lot older than me at the time, but he had done it. But I remember when we would drive back from climbing to go back to like La Cañada or wherever, he's like, one time he's like, oh, we need to stop at Shortcut Saddle and drop some water off. My friend Bruce is training for the Angeles Crest 100, and he's trying to like win it. I'm like, well, what's the Angeles Crest 100? And he's like, well, that's a 100-mile race from Wrightwood to Pasadena through these mountains.
Yeah.
And, it just plants a little seed. So every time we'd go climbing, I'd be hiking out of the climbing area, which was a huge uphill climb back to the Angeles Crest Highway. I'd be like, wow, what would it be like to run 100 miles in these mountains? And so every time I hiked out, that was the thought. And that was like 1996. And I kind of left LA in 98. I decided to stop going to my engineering job and just go to the mountains, and like I literally stopped going to work. It's in a bad place. And so and I said, well, maybe if I get back to triathlon, I will figure things out better, because I was like in the middle of this I had like an eating disorder going on, like all sorts of like bad stuff going on in my head. So I was like, well, I'll do an Ironman this year. I had moved to Mammoth. I said, I want to do an Ironman. And while I was training for that Ironman in 1998, then I said, okay, next year, Angeles Crest is going to be my project. I want to try to run that. And I did the Ironman. And in 1999 is really when that was when I ran my first ultra.
First ultra.
Yeah. And the whole point of my first ultra was to do Angeles Crest. You had to do a 50-mile race. So and where I lived was the Bishop 50 mile. And that's where that all started.
So the process ultra running, because you was with your friend at the Western State or something like that. You were like, you had your mind.
Well, it was a climbing partner who had done Western States.
That kind of piqued your interest.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it was the friend of a friend who was training for Angeles Crest that I never met.
Yeah.
But that really planted the seed, because I didn't know anything about where Western States was, but when he talked about the Angeles Crest 100, I'm like, well, okay, I know these mountains really well. Like that would be really interesting to try to run all the way across the mountains in a day.
Yeah.
So
that was your playground.
Yeah.
So that was.
Hey, those are like things I grew up in. So.
Yeah. So how you done it at? How you done that? That was your first ultra you done? That was the first one you done?
So the Bishop 50 was the first one.
First one.
And later that year, I tried Angeles Crest.
Yeah.
I didn't finish the first two times I tried.
Yeah.
But a big part of it is I had an eating disorder for 4 years.
Oh, okay. I got you.
From like 27 to 31 years old. So like trying to train for a 100-mile race while you have no control over your like a huge aspect of your life.
Wow.
It's pretty tough.
So that was like kind of like a dark time during your life, during that time, during the year or something like that?
Very dark. Very dark. I can honestly say the only reason I'm still here talking to you is because I knew if I could never do that to my family. Because it was pretty dark. I didn't care if a bus hit me, like that dark. But in my soul, I'm like, I could never do that to my parents. I couldn't do that to my friends. So you figure a way to. You always got to have hope. Something's got to get better.
It's got to have hope. Like, you don't have hope, what do you have?
Right. And so like I tried to always keep that in mind. And then finally in 2001, I was going to try to do Angeles Crest again, but then I said, well, maybe I should try a different one. Let me try Leadville.
Okay.
The Leadville 100.
Yes.
And I was signed up for both of them.
Okay. Wow.
And I was teaching school at the time.
Yes.
And And as the school year was going along, I just was so busy. I just wasn't training at all.
Yeah.
And by the time, May rolled around, I'm like, God, there's no way I can do Leadville. Like I haven't even trained.
Yeah.
Yeah. That school would, I'll tell you that system, and going from, basically September to like June, July.
Yeah, June. Yeah.
I mean, and them kids drain you too. I mean,
oh yeah. I love the kids, but they drain you. And right. And then meanwhile, I'm feeling like crap all the time because I'm like totally out of control eating. Like my eating disorder was like, weeks upon weeks of binge eating, like everything under the sun. And then weeks of trying to eat perfectly, and you just rinse and repeat for years on end. So your body's just slowly getting destroyed while your mind is like, gone. Yeah. And so the race manual for Leadville showed up in the mail back in the days when you actually had to mail things. And
the catalogs. Yep.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Wow, I have to send a check in. I don't know if I'm in the race till my check gets cashed. And so the race manual came and I went, oh crap. Maybe, what I'll do is as soon as school ends in the first week of June, I'm going to drive to Leadville and just run around and see what it's like. And that very first week I went from like running nothing and then I went to Leadville and I ran 75 miles that week. And I was like, okay, it's 10 weeks to the race. Yeah. All you have to do is be good for 10 weeks. 10 weeks. Don't mess up eating for 10 weeks.
10 weeks, that's all.
And I remembered from triathlon when I was training for the Ironman, like I was like, okay, I know I'll be ready. Like as long as I get, like 600-mile bike rides in or 6 really long runs in, in the 10 weeks or so before the race. I said, okay, well for Leadville, if I get 6 runs in that are like, 8 hours long, I should be fine. Yeah. So all summer long, I was running like between 60 and 80 miles a week, and I would get like usually like a 38 or 40 mile run in every 10 days. Every once in a while I'd screw up eating, and then I'd wind up running like 16 miles at midnight just on the roads in Mammoth because I didn't want to mess up.
Yeah. How?
yeah. I was fucked up. but and it came August 18th, 2001. My parents flew out from Florida and they crewed me. Oh, wow. And I finished. I did Leadville in 25 hours and change. Oh, wow. I cried the whole last mile. Oh, man. And the weird thing is as soon as I crossed the finish line, my eating disorder was gone.
Wow, like, come on. Really?
Wow.
I swear it ended at, what time would it have been? Like 5:46 in the morning. And I never had a problem again. It's been 21 years since that race, and I've never had a problem. And then 6 weeks later, I finished Angeles Crest. So
wow.
Yeah, it was kind of wild. Like maybe I think when I finished Leadville, what went through my mind that maybe got rid of it or cured it or whatever you want to call it. Because like running 100 miles seems so absurd. Your family saying, well, why do you want to do that? You can't do that.
Yeah, of course.
And with all the stuff I had went through, like kind of destroying my body over the prior 4 years, finishing that race was like, wow, I'm not dead. My body still works. I can still do something that I set my mind to. And Absolutely. So it was just, just that feeling of,
it was that hope. It was that hope, and it came true.
Right. It was finally something on my own that wasn't, it wasn't like, okay, your parents, go to school, get your degree, even though you're fighting tooth and nail, like people prodding you on. and that was just one of those things. You did it kind of at the, the end of the day, like people helped you, but you still, it's something you got into on your own, just pushed yourself through and had a goal, and yeah, you reached it finally. And like I said, I think the big part was my mind had been so messed up those prior 4 years, and my body was so, I didn't even know whose body I was in anymore. And I guess the realization that no, you're still here, you're still alive, you can still do things.
Yes, definitely.
And I still have those feelings, I mean, life is long, a lot of things, a lot of ups and downs.
Oh yeah, and,
definitely. I think that's always been one of the beauties of running.
Yes.
Is you get so much stuff going through your head while you run, and you don't always believe in yourself, and your body surprises you. It continues to give you hope.
Do you think that when you went through that dark time, that was your light? Like, everybody has that one peak of light, that they kind of hold on to, that's like their only way of just kind of existing, I guess you can say. Because I've talked to so many runners who are running because of mental health, because they used to be alcoholics, and or whatever the case may be, it kind of brought them out of that. It was something positive that they're doing to bring them out of that. Do you think like that was like your peak of light, during your dark time? Or it was
it definitely was, because I mean, I actually did make a conscious decision to get back into running, because climbing, there was like, I always wanted to climb harder and harder and harder stuff, and it's like always such a big deal, like strength to weight. It's like you want to be as light as you possibly can. And now part of me going back to when I was in high school and was 50 pounds heavier, like just like in your head, you always have an image of what you think you are, even when the scale or the mirror tells you totally different.
Yes.
The whole, body dysmorphia, is that what they call it? That's me. And so climbing became unhealthy because I was just, and I said, it's like with alcohol and drugs, you don't need those to live, but you have to eat. And I was like, I need to, if I get back into running, like I have to eat. Like it's not about just being the lightest possible thing. Like, and I have to learn how to eat healthy again. And I was living in a new place in the mountains, and running was also a way to explore where I lived. So it's like, and I always told myself, I will never let running be punishment for eating bad. I don't want exercise to be punishment. I want to do it because I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
Yeah. I do that now. I'm like, oh, let me go run off these tacos.
Yeah.
And that's definitely human nature. Like,
absolutely.
But like I was trying not to go like, okay, I had a really bad day eating, so I'm gonna run 30 miles tomorrow. Like I never wanted to do that.
No, you don't.
And yeah, I'll admit there's a couple of times I hopped on my bike and I rode 50 miles or something like that. But I was aware of it, and I would try not to make that mistake again.
Yeah.
But it was liberating in 2001 after finishing both those races when the eating problems went away, because then I was able to just truly enjoy being out and doing what I was doing, because now I didn't really think about food anymore.
Okay.
Or I didn't have the compulsion to overeat.
Yeah.
And my overeating was definitely legendary. It's like go to the gas station, buy like a bag of like 50 donut gems and just drive around until you
wow.
Yeah.
Like eat a whole box of cereal with a gallon of milk. You just couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I was trying to trying to drown something out.
That's a.
I can laugh.
I think you should. I think you should write a book about that whole experience, because you just never know. You know who needs to hear that. Who needs to hear that story. But take me from that point to how you got into photography. Like, what was the turning point? What was the day like? Did you take a picture and snap it and be like, okay, I think what was take me through that time or that day, maybe?
Yeah, essentially, I mean, I hadn't touched a camera forever. And eventually in 2014, I was on another marriage. That was my third.
Oh, wow.
Probably not.
Dang, Howie.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my. Come on. Oh, okay.
That's a whole other
story. That's a whole story of itself.
We're gonna do another show on Howie's marriages.
That's another book. That's another book. That's another book of what not to do. Okay, go ahead.
Right.
I'll quit.
I'm still friends with my first ex-wife. She was awesome. We just grew apart. But but my but at the time of my third, like, I was a high school teacher.
Okay.
But I did wind up, I guess if I backed up for a second, when I moved to the Sierra, like within a year of living in the mountains, I actually played music full time for like almost 10 years. So like I kind of did get to live that dream. But then it was hard to make a living. So I was like, well, I could teach math and science because I used to be an engineer. So I taught high school. But after 7 years of teaching, I was kind of getting burned out. And then at the time, I was also kind of getting burned out on this. I don't know, our marriage kind of sucked. And then paying a mortgage when you're in a crappy marriage sucked too. And we wound up getting a divorce like during she actually asked for the divorce. Well, I don't want to get into my divorce thing because it wasn't pretty, but anyway, so like in the spring or fall winter of 2014, we decided we were going to get divorced. And I was like, maybe I should resign from teaching at the end of the school year. We're going to sell our condo that takes care of like that commitment. And I'll be free to do whatever I want. Cause it was another dark time because it sucked. It's just the right people for each other. And so at the end of the school year, like the condo had sold. And I had resigned from teaching, and we got some money from the sale of the condo. And I was like, I think I can take a year off, just live off of savings. I'm gonna move to Colorado. And because my friend who owned a house in Silverton, where Hard Rock is, when I ran Hard Rock that summer, he's like, well, if you want to stay in my house, just pay the utilities. He didn't live in the house; he just had the house. And he's like. And he was always super into music and things like that. And he's like, well, you should live in the house. You can set up a studio, or you can go across. He owned a hotel too that was only open during the race, but it had a stage because it had a bar downstairs, and we used to play music there. And he always mentioned, well, my ideal thing for the hotel would be to have a whole band come in, and they can record albums there and just kind of like be in the mountains and kind of be creative. So I was like, okay, I'm going to come to Silverton and be creative and get back to the music side and write an album and record it myself. Well, 5 months later, I didn't have anything done. I just had a writer's block. I don't know. I think I was such a perfectionist that I'd record something, I'd listen to it the next day. I'm like, no, that sucks, and erase it and start again. And after 5 months, you're like, well, shit, what am I going to do? I don't want to go back to teaching. And I had my two dogs with me, and my two dogs, my husky and Malamute, they're used to being with me 24/7.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I go back to a regular job, I don't want to leave them home hours a day. So what am I going to do? And the fall in Colorado was so beautiful with all the aspen trees turning colors. And I was just taking pictures with my iPhone and sticking them on Facebook. And people seemed to like the pictures I was taking with my phone. And I had a couple friends who shot running, mountain running. And I just kind of got the little light bulb. I was like, I need to get a real camera again.
Yeah.
Maybe I can shoot running.
Yeah.
And I wound up coming. Yeah. And in February of 2015, I was in Southern California. A friend offered me a place to stay there for a few months.
Okay.
And I got a camera.
Yeah.
And I asked Steve Harvey, who put on the Old Goat races, which are, what area is that? It's a little north of you.
Okay.
Santiago Peak is up there.
Okay.
I said, hey, can I shoot the Old Goat 50 mile?
Yeah.
He's like, sure, come on out. And so I went out there, and I met my friend Ivan Buzik. He's been one of my mentor inspirations for photography, and he's a really good friend. And he's another 25 years older than me or something like that. And we went out on the trail, and he's like, kind of showed me what to do. And he went like 100 yards down the trail so that we weren't shooting the same exact spot.
Yeah.
And I wound up staying out, 14 hours to shoot the whole race.
Okay.
In a couple of different spots. And amazingly, people bought some pictures. I think I sold like $150 of pictures that race or something like that. I remember when it ticked over $100, I was like, oh my God, wow. It's something.
Yeah.
But it's just people seem to like what I did.
Yeah.
And I think Andy Glaze was the first person who ever bought a picture for me. And
Okay.
He runs a lot of races.
Yeah.
And a lot of the familiar faces were all out at this race, because it's like it's such a small community. And
yes, it is.
But and I was still kind of living off the savings, and I think later that year, the real turning point was my friend Candace asked, would you want to shoot? She had first put on the Tahoe 200 the year before. It was the first 200-mile point-to-point race, and she had a brand new one that year called the Bigfoot 200 up in Washington. She's like, would you like to shoot Bigfoot?
Yeah.
And I would be like, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
And that summer I realized too, I was looking at everybody else's pictures, some other photographers, and I'm like, my pictures don't look like that. What's the difference? And I had a friend in Silverton. He's like, hey, you want to try this lens? He's like, I'll probably sell it to you. And it was this really big lens, like a professional lens.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started to shoot with that, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I see what's going on. And
okay.
And I immediately went massively into debt.
Oh.
And because I was like, you know what, if I'm going to do this for a living, then I need to get the right tools.
Gotta invest.
Right.
Sure.
I got to invest, like, because, and, maybe it was bad that because when I was a teacher and everything, I had a lot of credit available on my credit cards. So like, because I owed nothing when I got divorced, I was, free and clear.
Okay.
And so I bought like a bunch of nice stuff, and shooting the Bigfoot 200, it was a 108-hour cutoff race, and I only slept 5 hours. I wound up, shooting a lot of trail stuff, but I shot a ton of stuff in aid stations and the finish line.
Yeah.
And when Candace saw the pictures, you know, because as a race director, you know, you kind of see sort of what you think your race is like.
Yeah, yeah.
But she was like, wow, this is, it wasn't what she was going to expect.
Yeah.
Like you started to, especially when people are between mile 100 and 200, like you really start to see their soul come out.
Oh yeah. Ooh.
You know.
Yeah.
And I think it was where I kind of discovered, or at least it was pointed out to me.
Yeah.
That it wasn't the trail shots and stuff like that. Like those are pretty, but all those things I took in aid stations.
Yeah.
Where people are like
hurting.
They're pretty blown out, you know, they're like just trying to rally and keep moving.
Yeah.
That became the thing that I really got attracted to.
Yeah. The soul catching people at the probably worst moment, at just really.
It's almost like at their worst, but that's at their best.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
You know what I mean? Because that's where you're deep in it.
Yeah.
You know,
we deep to the soul,
where people are exposed, where they're raw, where there's no more like, there's no more facade. There's no like, oh, here's my happy Instagram. It's like, no, here you're 175 miles into that. Like, you don't give a shit about Instagram.
You need to catch me on my worst. You know, I went by my worst. You catch me on my happy time. You know, on the trails. Oh man.
Yeah. So it was. Yeah, it's like the whole photography thing just happened by accident because I realized I failed at music. and what am I going to do? But you know what? Ultimately, photography is so much like music because it's creative and it touches people. And it tells a story.
Tell us, man, point.
So it's like I got the same feelings out of shooting that I got out of playing guitar or drums. So it's like the same thing, but a different, instead of guitar, it's a camera. You know.
That's a beautiful stuff.
But it was not easy. I lived in my truck for 4 years.
4 years, man. Longer than Steve Harvey lived in his car.
You know, and part of it was the first couple of years, it was by choice because I just wanted to travel everywhere and keep overhead low. But by the third year, you know, because you're only making so much at that point because you're not that good or whatever it is. Your credit card bills are getting bigger and bigger, and eventually you're like, I can't actually live anywhere because I pay so much every month to my credit cards. I can't afford to live inside. Because I was like 40 grand in debt. And then you start going, how am I going to crawl out of this? You know, and again, and it's interesting, you know, with the social media world, you know, everybody sees like, oh, here's Howie taking pictures at this race, he's on this mountain. Here's his dog's life is all happy. But they don't see the loneliness of living on the road year after year. Or when you're at like, all your cards are you're basically maxed out. You don't know if you have enough money to buy gas to drive the 1,000 miles to shoot the race. And you're like, if my truck breaks down, am I going to have to get a job at a diner or somewhere in town so I can fix my car?
But
that was probably like, what's that?
Saying that you could easily give that up and go back to security of teaching or something, but you stuck with it. You know, I got that the key. Stuck with it.
And the whole reason I stuck with it, 100% was my two dogs, Mickey and Joey.
Okay.
I'll try not to cry because they both passed away.
That's okay. Cry.
No, I didn't want to go back to a regular life because we were a pack. We were with each other 24 hours a day. They came to every single race I shot. thousands of runners all over the country knew those dogs because, you know,
Wow.
you'd be at the top of some peak,
Yeah.
150 miles into a race, and they're like
Yeah.
crawling up to the top.
Yeah.
And then what do they see? They see this fluffy husky and Malamute, and it's just something
Yeah.
soft and
Yeah.
nice,
Yeah.
warm to cuddle
Yeah.
up with, you know, and forget about your pain for a minute. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm like, I have to get good at this, and I have to make this work so that I can be with my dogs all the time. I can't go back to a regular job.
Wow.
So they were like my muse. I blame it all on them.
That's commitment. That's really,
Yeah.
whew.
And Howie, I don't think you realize, because you've been through a lot of transitions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, we're similar, but we're not. But we're similar in the transitions, like as far as, you know, like taking a leap of faith, you know, and completely like leaving something and being like, you know what, like I'm good with this. Like I'm done, reach this course, and I'm over here and I'm gonna try this. And I think that's something because that you have inside you is that like you're not afraid to live in your car for 4 years so that you can become the best photographer, or you know, invest and go into credit card debt, you know, to get the best tools for your camera. And here you are making awesome photos. And you're right, like with Instagram, you know, they don't see the pain and the struggle and the hard times, obviously, because you're not posting that, but you know, that you just got it easy, and it's not that way. And I don't want to make this about me, because this is about Howie today, but
no, I want to hear. I want to hear.
I completely made the decision this year, because I was, you know, and Kenneth gonna do a whole story, you know, do my whole interview session. But you know, I played overseas basketball. I was a coach for several years, the last 8-9 years, coaching college and high school basketball. And this year, 2022, I made the decision not to coach anymore. Nothing for the, and I been a part of basketball since the 4th grade.
Right.
No, and I'm in a space right now, like where it's great. Like I'm free. Like I'm able to like touch here and touch there and see if I like it. And if I don't, it's okay, because I can go over here and see if I like this. You know, and the teaching world, you know, like my mom is a teacher, and she, you know, that's why I empathize with you on the teaching, because you know, I taught for a little bit, and you know, I just knew that wasn't me sitting at a desk with them kids. You know, I'm much more than that, even though I did take away some joy from the kids and teaching, and, you know, it has its own special bond with the kids and everything, but it just, it didn't fit. It didn't fit. And I think people know that, but they're so scared of leaving that, you know, that security blanket, that, you know, that comfortable space. They're so afraid of like what's going to come, you know, or you know, like what's going to happen to them, you know, in the next year or so. So I think your story is great. Like I'm listening to you, and I can like hear you talk like all day long. And you can shed a couple tears too. I don't mind that. Like I think it's amazing, because it's actually touching me, you know, and it's like I'm on the right path, because all I had to do was just make the decision. I
remember a long time ago, like when I first moved to the mountains, and when I literally just called in sick to my engineering job a few days in a row. And then I think after the weekend, I just called and said, yeah, I'm not coming in anymore. and they were like, oh, just take a leave of absence. We don't want to lose you. You know, like you take a month or whatever. And then I went up to the mountains, and the very first day that I remember I think I had packed all my stuff up, into the back of my truck, and I woke up in this campground and was like, wow, I'm homeless. I can do anything I want. And it was the most amazing feeling ever, because your whole life, your parents are telling you, your girlfriend or your wife or whoever, and I looked at it like, whether or not you have a job or whatever, the sun is going to rise and set every day. But if you don't have your health, whether it's your mental or physical health, then none of that other stuff mattered. So for me, it's kind of like survival. Like all these different resets I've done, it's like a survival mechanism. Like if I get miserable enough, or like I know I'm on the wrong path, I'm like, something in me just says, I have to stop. I have to do something different, like, because this is killing me or whatever. So it's like I've never been afraid, because I always figured like, well, somehow things always work out.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think the amazing part is every time I've made some sort of big change, like even for the first one, moving to the Sierra, like people come out of the woodwork and help you in ways like the generosity of people just never ceases to amaze. Like when you put it out to the universe that you've surrendered and you're open to whatever it is,
right?
People come out. I mean, same thing. Like when I was on the road for 4 years in my truck, there were times too where like I'd have a friend in Southern California, like I'd stay at my friend Marcus's house for like 6 weeks. He'd let me, he had an extra room, or my friend in Vegas, June, would let me stay there for a week or two while I edited. There were people all over that. Like we don't ever do anything truly alone,
Absolutely.
Always somebody, there's people that, and then when you're in the position, you do the same thing. To help others out. And but like the end of the day, it's always been like survival motivated, I think. And granted, I don't have kids, like there's I'm sort of free a bit on that end to other than my dog. That's my kid. So my dogs really were what I was always trying to take care of.
Their kids.
They ate better than me. But it's and I look forward to hearing I'd love to hear both of your stories.
Definitely.
For sure.
I think as a photographer, like that's like one of the things I've learned about is just because it is a storytelling thing, and
yes, it is.
Everybody has an interesting story behind them.
And definitely, totally agree.
And like through shooting all these different things, especially the 2 mile, when you spend like 4 and 5 days with following people across the terrain, you start to learn a lot about people. Because I just don't sit there and take pictures, I'll sit and then I talk to people. They might be there for an hour. I'll talk to them a long time. I'll sit next to them. Eventually I bring the camera up and start to do my thing. But it's almost like I like to feel like I'm a participant in the race myself, not just an outside observer.
Exactly.
And a lot of that helps too, is like having run ultras for so long. It's like when somebody's singing they're dead in a 200-mile race, it's like, well, okay, I've run a 200-mile race. Like I know what you feel like right now, and maybe try this or try that or whatever. Like here's some, let me give you some hope.
No doubt.
And I'm sure they appreciate that. Instead of you just being the awkward man standing over here, like actually engage and talk with me, and just be a human, be a person, be here in the moment with me.
There was a guy at the Tahoe 200, and I was a couple miles up the trail from the mile 103, like the halfway point, and he stopped and we talked for like 5 minutes, and I snapped some pictures of him when he was in that cave. But he was done. He was ready to quit.
Yeah.
And, and I had that come to Jesus moment there with him for like 5 minutes and put a bunch of words in his head.
Okay.
And he finished. He wound up
Awesome.
finishing, and he finished really well.
That's great.
And I think eventually, I know some photos from that got published. And I forget if he wrote the story, but I don't know, that stuff, like, to me, that makes everything worth it, because I love to capture good stuff, but if I can somehow help somebody believe in themselves when they were in a dark spot, and that they kept going, like, it doesn't get better than that.
I know. I probably could have knew that come to Jesus moment in my dark spot.
I wish like, and it's just like people have done it to me when I've been feeling bad. There's always people to help, but
definitely.
But it's that's one of the things I love the most. That's why I like shooting the really long stuff, because you really do get to be a part, and it's not even just it. And even when it comes to the professional runners, like, I can be at Barkley, I could be, Courtney could be in there and not feeling the greatest, and it's like, you can have those interactions. It doesn't matter who it is. Like, it's really cool. It's just it's fun to be more than just a fly on the wall. It becomes super fulfilling when you can contribute to people more than just capturing an image of them.
You captured the soul. You capture a story of what they're going to do at that moment. Because we look at these pictures right now that you take, you see the eyes, telling a story of what you're going to.
The eyes have it. Like, it was really hard during COVID to shoot when everybody had masks on.
Yeah, I know.
Because, like, faces are my favorite things, and now it's like, you're taking my face away from me. But you still have the eyes. But everything. Oh,
I think you answered my next question, as far as like, like what you've learned, like through the years of photography. I think that being intentional about your work and what you're doing is huge. You're intentional with when taking pictures, not just taking pictures. There's so many other things that come with it.
And that's I think the huge thing is, like, I lay awake at night and I see images. Like, if I know I'm shooting, doesn't matter the race, if I know I'm shooting a certain thing, like, I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about what are those images I want to capture. And it's not total. Like, there's plenty of stuff I improvise on, but a lot of times I visualize a lot. And so, like, in a sense, it's like you're making your own luck by, if you've pre-thought about the stuff you want to capture, then when you see it, you anticipate a lot of stuff, and you know where to be when things will probably happen, as well as knowing what's an interesting shot versus somebody just randomly with a can of Coke in their hand or something like that. And the thing is, with any photographer, though, like, we can shoot 1,000 pictures, 909 of them might be bridge, that there'll be those 5 men's. Like, not every, I shoot so much crap, like, there's a lot of bad pictures, they never see the light of day. But and at the same point, it's like, I am probably any artist, it's like being self-critical. Like, I nitpick my stuff, constantly. That's, to me, there's no end point. It's always trying to grow and get better.
Right.
Same, with the shoot we just did in San Diego. It's like, looking through all the pictures, you're like, oh man, I wish I would have done this way or this way or this way. Or like, oh, that was good, like, I should do more of that. Or like it's a constant like reevaluating process. But yeah, it definitely, you know, like when I first started, it was like you know, it's more like you're thinking of the money because you're like, well, I have to make a living.
Yeah.
But eventually you get to the point where you're like, when you're capturing things really the way you want to, all that other stuff starts to come
Exactly.
on its own. And you don't have to try, like, and you stop worrying about like other people more, like, you know, because people, like, a lot of creative things have a lot of ego involved and a lot of competition, and you're like, why did that person get this job, why did they get it, why didn't I get it? And you know, it's, you know, you play all sorts of mind games. And I try not to think that way anymore. You just like, I do what I do. People like it, I hope they like it. And yeah, I think if you just follow that vision that's in your head and your heart, all the other stuff just, no matter what job you do, it feels like the good stuff will come if you're on like a true path or something like that. And yeah, I stray. I mean, I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. You know, I get mad at things or whatever, or get frustrated, but you just always try to grow and get better, and
that's it.
To hopefully you know, have that ideal that's in your head that you lay awake at night thinking about.
Definitely.
You know.
So I read closely, you know, scrolling down, see all your pictures, you take everybody. That's why there's one picture of you. You know, so, and that was probably like a bad time, one of your obstacles you have to overcome, you know, like you say. But take it to that moment, April 4th, 2021.
Oh, April 4th. Oh, April 2nd would have been
2021.
That would have been the actual date. Probably I put the picture up on the 4th.
You put the video on the 4th, okay then,
I made the mistake of putting an Instagram story on, I think, the night that happened without an explanation. And after my inbox filled up, I got to delete that. Yeah, that was something that just came out of the blue 5 weeks prior. I hadn't been feeling the greatest, but you know, I was still doing stuff, and for a couple, I had a rough couple of years between losing both my dogs, who you probably saw in that one picture I sent you, and some relationship stuff, just like a whole bunch of stuff, and just the stress of a lot of things, and so my April 2nd, which thyroid cancer, I really have Laz, the race director of Barkley, Lazarus Lake, or Gary Cantrell, to thank for it. Because I was going to shoot Barkley that year, and this is during the COVID times, and you had to have a COVID passport, which meant either you were vaccinated or you had already had it and recovered. Well, at that time, the vaccines were just being rolled out, so it was really hard to get a vaccine unless you were really old. So I was like, well, let me go get an antibody test. Maybe I had it. Maybe that's why I felt bad, and that'll be my passport. So when I went to go get my antibody test in town, they're like, oh, you haven't given blood in a while. You want to you know, just do a regular blood panel. I was like, whatever. And the results come back, and one of my numbers, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, was like 0.013. And I was like, that's not right. And so I go into the nurse because they missed it. And I'm like, Houston, I think we have a problem. And
Mhm.
she's like, oh, well, maybe it's just a random, come back in a few weeks, test again.
Mhm.
And I was like, I think I'm going to go to my doctor. And my doctor, he felt my neck and he's like, why don't you, let me send you to the hospital to get an ultrasound.
Mhm.
And I went to get an ultrasound and there was a couple little nodules on my thyroid.
Mhm.
And I went and shot and so I made an appointment. He wanted to get him biopsied. So I went and shot Barkley. And as soon as I came back to Barkley, I did the biopsy. And the results come back. Now, normally you would hope the results go to your doctor first.
Yeah.
But the way everything is nowadays, it goes right to like your patient portal online and you get like a notification. Oh, you have a new test result.
Yeah.
Let's click on that.
Yeah.
Oh, you have cancer. I'm like, okay, that's not something I expected to see in my life, but here we are. At least I have a kind that is highly treatable, if not curable.
Okay.
And literally 3 days from the biopsy results, I was on the operating table.
Wow.
What was kind of funny about my surgeon, though, you have the right surgeon when I go for the consultation.
Yeah.
And he's asking some questions about you. I'm a distance runner, da da da. And his first question to me is like, oh, have you done hard rock? And I was like, I like this guy. I'm like, yeah, well, actually, I've done it like 10 times. He's like, oh, I'm surprised I haven't seen you there, because him and his son would work at an aid station.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like April 2nd, I had my thyroid and 7 lymph nodes that had spread to. So it was kind of aggressive in there. And he was like, you got really lucky, because he's like, your cancer was quite aggressive, but your blood or the feeling, he's like, it didn't give very many outward signs that was going on. So you got lucky that it was caught. But yeah, that was, like, I had never had surgery in my life.
Wow.
And so to go for like a pretty, it's a very delicate surgery, because they're taking something off of your trachea. Your vocal cords there, the nerves of your vocal cords are right there. There's other glands. The lymph nodes they had to take out were right by your carotid and jugular vein. Like, so he said it was a really hard surgery. I guess they had me out for like 5 hours. And I'd never been on opioids before. And like, wow, they give you really good drugs in the hospital. Holy crap. But I do remember, like, I mean, I don't know, you always got to have a sense of humor about things. And I remember the night in the hospital was probably the most relaxing night that I've had in ages, because all these, after shooting Barkley, there's all these emails coming in like, oh, we need pictures from this, we need pictures, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, I just had cancer surgery. I don't have to do shit. And, because who's going to like press you for something when you just had like cancer. So for like a few days at least, I got to kind of like chill out. But it was scary. I mean, it's still scary. At the same time, you're like, holy crap, like, even though I have a curable or a treatable type of cancer, you're like, it's still cancer. Like, that's just I mean, my dad died of cancer, a different kind, but like, it's when I was out, like, I immediately was able to go back and hike. Like, the doctor's like, well, once you go home, he's like, take a day off, but you can hike as much as you can tolerate. Like, don't run for 2 weeks, but if you want to go hike 45 minutes, an hour a day, he's like, don't run, because there was a lot that went on there. You got to heal. But yeah, like hiking that first day, like, you look at the world different. You're like, suddenly you hear the birds different, the creek's different, the stomach's different, because you're like, wow, I was just on an operating table with somebody taking things out of me and sewing me back up. It was a really strange feeling. definitely, it makes you appreciate things
Oh yeah,
Right.
in a different way.
I can imagine so.
And even, you know, like 6 months later, I had to do a second treatment, a radioactive iodine,
Yeah.
which is supposed to kill anything that's left over.
Yeah.
Because if in case it spreads somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that, they do like a body scan a week after, and they saw from that it had spread to another lymph node and to my spleen, which was really odd. So, you know, then again, you know, 6 months later, now you're like kind of like, okay, this is for real. Like it's actually spread somewhere else after surgery. But the iodine does its thing over the course of a couple months as it breaks down. And I just had a full body scan and neck scans like a couple of weeks ago, and it's all gone. So it killed it all.
Yeah.
And I'll still get to go for another scan like in September.
Okay.
Because, you know, they keep kind of checking things. And but the frequency will start to spread out as time goes on.
Yeah, that's good.
So hopefully I'll live a long life to annoy people for years to come.
So from going from your probably not so good, you know, experience or, you know, thing that could happen to you, because, you know, I don't think anybody would want that to happen to them. But take us to like the greatest joy in your life, like the most memorable moment that just brought you extreme joy.
You know, you're gonna make me cry again.
Oh no.
There's two moments that stand out probably, and probably the greatest one. Like I was on a shoot in Easter Island, which I think it's the most remote inhabited island in the world. So like what, 7,000 miles away from home. And my dogs were in a kennel, and one of my dogs was 16 and 3 months. He was old. And halfway through the trip, like I got locked out of my phone, like just from the humidity and sweat. It, you know, it's in your pocket and it's like you're logging into it, but eventually it just locked me out and so the communication sucks on that island anyway. And I borrowed a friend's phone, and I happened to be able to eventually see an email from the kennel that your one dog isn't doing well, and he should probably be put down. And my dogs were my life, and I'm like, here I am 7,000 miles away, and there's not a thing in the world I can do. And I remember walking out. I was at dinner with the vice president of like iFit Nordic Track and my whole crew, and I'm like, I need to be excused for a minute. And I just walked out to the street and I literally laid on my hands and knees in the middle of the street and cried. Like it was the worst moment probably in my life that whole night, because I just kept thinking my dog is going to die alone without me, and I can't be there because it's impossible to get there. And eventually, like a day or so later, I got a notice from a vet that they had brought my dog to the vet, and the vet was going to keep him there. And they're like, what do you want us to do? I'm like, well, do whatever it takes to keep him alive. And they did. You know, they're like, you know, we're giving him IV fluids and everything. Like he's starting to eat a little bit because, you know, he originally had stopped eating, he wasn't moving. And so for a week, I'm just praying my dog isn't going to die without me. because that just like was the worst thought I could think of, for him to die alone. And so probably the greatest day of my life is when I flew, I don't even know how long that flight was. It's 2 different flights, 15 hours or something. Flying into Durango. When I landed in Durango in the morning, I didn't even want to call the vet in Montrose, because I just, you're going by hope. You don't want, if I call them, I'm going to know either he's dead or he's alive.
Yeah.
And so walking into that vet's office and going, I'm here to pick up Joey. And I said, is he still alive? Then the receptionist is like, I think so, but I'm not sure. I'm going to have to ask the vet. Why don't you go in room number 2 and wait? It was the longest 10 freaking minutes of my life. Actually, no, I didn't even. And then, oh no, I sat down in the waiting room. I wasn't even in an office. And then 10 minutes later, all of a sudden, a little gurney comes out. My little.
Oh.
So Mike, it was Christmas time. So that was my Christmas gift. I got 4 days. He couldn't even stand up when I got him. And by the 4th day, he walked a mile around town, kissed the Hard Rock, and then we walked home. And then I took him to the vet to set him free. But seeing him, when I thought I'd never see him again, that's probably this.
Yeah.
There is no gift like life.
Right.
And then the same thing happened with months later. His sister, as soon as that one dog passed away, like my other dog Mickey, she just
went downhill. Yeah.
She went downhill, and then 8 months later, I was on another job, and the vet, and my dog was with my friend in Washington, and she was having these seizures, and the vet's like, she has to be put down. I'm like, well, can do whatever it takes to like keep her alive for a night. I got to be there, and I flew. Everybody in my crew understood. They filled in for me, and I flew to Washington. And it was like the same thing all over, seeing my dog wheeled out. And I'm like, it's 10 in the morning. I'm like, well, what's the latest I can come back? Like, I just want to take her to a park so I can spend a few hours. So there's the long drawn out story of the 2 greatest high points in my life, just getting to be with my dogs at the end. Because I figured with my last dog, as tough as her life had become after she lost her brother, and she started having seizures, and she was just, life was really hard for her. And I realized when I was sitting in that park, just some random park in Washington, and I was laying on the ground, and she was sleeping like on my chest. And I said, it's when it just hit me, an hour from now, when we're back at the vet, she's going to be sleeping. Right now, she's sleeping because she's content. She's content that she's with me. That's all that matters. She's with me. And she's happy. And an hour later, she's going to be with me in my arms, with her world being perfect, because she's with me. And she's just not going to wake up from it. So that was like my way of somehow getting it over in my head that ultimately at the end, she's still going to be happy because she's just laying there with me, rubbing her, you know. See, you got tears out of me.
I know. What was one thing that both of your dogs did that was like, you know, something that you would like never forget about them? Like it was their personality, you know, to do.
Well, they were just, I mean, they were both like these insanely loving dogs, but like Joey, he was famous for, like, his nickname was Gaff Joey, don't give a fuck. He just is kind of like this aloof. He was the most like gentle, loving dog. You saw his face, like everybody saw his face and melted. Like there were people I became friends with because I remember one race, there was this girl at the Tahoe 200. The whole time I'm shooting, she's acting like I've known her forever. And I'm like, who is this person that knows me? And all it was is she saw Joey at the pre-race meeting and she's like, whose dog is that? And they're like, that's one of the photographer's dogs. Yeah. So she fell in love with my dog, but now she knew who I was because of that, but I had no idea of any of this. And now we're still really good friends to this day, but it's just an endearing little shit. Like there's something about, and when he wanted to come up to you, he did, and he just was this big, giant, fluffy thing. And Mickey was sassy. She was super communicative. She was like a little person, but she was sassy. She just had my friend. Someday, if you get the chance, look at my Facebook, and look at my Facebook cover photo. And my friend Naomi, who's the one that fell in love with Joey, drew a picture of both of them. Fire and ice. Mickey was the fire, Joey was the ice. And the art sums them up perfectly. Like I don't have any tattoos, but if I ever did, I would get like right here, I'd have each of them from the art that she drew, because it was amazing. They just, it's one of those things. I remember I was on Mount Baldy with my friend Nadia, and she had her two dogs. I had my two dogs. And like, you're just watching dog butts wiggling as you're running down the trail. It just makes you happy. You just see your dogs being dogs. It makes you happy. You know what I mean? It's just like if there's a person you see that just makes you happy. Like, and it's the same with my current dog. I got another dog 8 months or almost a year ago. That feels like the combination of both of my other dog's personalities plus his own thing. And just watching him do his thing on the trails just brings like a simple joy that no human has ever really brought to me. But I don't know, like go pull people out in the running world. Like there's a ton of runners that just adored those two dogs. And most of the time they didn't care that I was somewhere after thought. People would come up to me, they're like, oh, we saw Mickey and Joey, so we figured you'd be here. Or if they saw me first, they're like, where's Mickey and Joey?
Yep.
It wasn't like, how are you doing? Where's Mickey and Joey?
Yeah.
So
wow, that's amazing. So within a few words, you know what the show was about. Kenneth has his tagline, live, run, boundless. So within a few words, give us your boundless motivation that you would like to share with everyone. What's a few words you'd like to give to everyone to take away, I guess?
Because at the end of the day, it's like, I'll get deep for a second. Well, when you think about it, the probability that we even exist at all is a miracle. All the matter in the universe, 14 billion years of the universe, the fact that you're here now, that you exist, we get this 80 years, this little window of life. that's like it's a kind of a crazy concept to wrap your head around. And you know, make the best of that, this our little slice in time that we're here, and not be afraid to follow what it is that really drives you, you know.
Right.
Kind of like what we went back to where you said, you know, this isn't working for me anymore. I'm gonna try this. I'll try this, you know. Take chances, you know, see things, go travel, go check out the world, you know, hang out with new people, like learn stuff, learn something new, like just don't sit in the same rut you've been in, because life is short. You know, it really is. I guess just don't be afraid. You know, things don't happen overnight, but don't be afraid don't be afraid of life.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. I like that.
There you go.
I like that. Just my life is short, you know, you just gotta make the most out of it and put yourself out there.
And you know, almost like time doesn't matter. I didn't start doing photography until I was 44. Like most people would think, oh, and new career at 44. Like, what's it matter? Like,
yeah,
you could still go another 30 years. You think about what have you done the last 30 years? That's a long time. So go 30 years in the future. That's a long time.
Yep. People put that cap on, or they that expectation on the age, and then they think that they can't do it because they've reached that age.
Absolutely.
And I've talked to many people who are in that thought process, and I'm like, no, like, you know, they haven't. Even some of my family members, like, they haven't been outside of San Diego, and I'm like, I've traveled, so you know, they're kind of like living vicariously through me. Like, you know, what is Paris like? What is Germany like? Okay, you know, and it's just, man, like, I am the person who I am today by being exposed to all these different things, traveling, meeting people, getting uncomfortable. There's so many. I like to get uncomfortable because I like to see how I operate in those spaces. You know, it's kind of like interesting to me. You know, so
100%. 100%. We're on the same wavelength there.
Yes.
Also,
Kenneth, you're batter up now.
Oh yes, that definitely it was great. You know, yes, it was a beautiful moment. You know. And just being part, you know, and how you're saying, just gotta just not be afraid to step out, you know, and take chances. Of course, you want to be wise, you know, but you gotta put yourself out there, you know.
Yeah,
you never know that, you know.
And sometimes you just throw caution to the wind, even when you know better. You're like, I still got to try this.
and I'll let age be your excuse, you know. And I'm not letting that age be.
Yep.
You know, who know? I know a daughter been like doing a photo shoot where I'm at, you know, my age, you know, a couple of weeks ago, you know, it's crazy, you know. The past couple of years,
right?
We've been crazy, you know, with now doing this social media stuff, you know. But it's all about putting myself out there, you know, and just finding something I really enjoy, you know. And I take
exactly.
So I did get a chance to meet some great people on the process. So like you see, a chance to meet the famous, the renowned Howie Stern, you know, and so many other amazing people because of what I'm able to do what I'm doing right now, you know. So definitely.
I'm honored and humbled to be a part of it. So
Now I feel gratitude just able to do what I'm doing, you know, and just bring other people along with me on the journey. And so for saying that, thank you, Howie. And just glad we're able to meet you in person, chat to talk to you, you know, and I see Instagram, and just like a lot of people, like Maggie, see her, hear about her, YouTube people, but get a chance to meet them in person, and it is what you done for me, we done for the running community here in San Diego, and just want to be a part of this, definitely, it's awesome, that's special. And so thank you for the time for joining me, Tony C, and the rest of the Live Run Balance family. And thank you, C, for being my co-host, my guest co-host on the Live Run Balance show.
Of course.
Yeah, so hopefully we get to meet you in person again, Howie. I got to take a trip up to Colorado, haven't been yet. Yeah, so yeah. Definitely.
Well, I'll be back in June to shoot the San Diego 100. So we'll all have
I'll probably be volunteer. I'll probably be volunteer for the race. I just haven't signed up yet to volunteer.
Well, go do it.
Yeah, I'm not probably do it tonight. Was I get out there before I forget again? I keep forgetting.
Go do it. But yeah, it'd be great to come down and run with y'all again and hang out.
Yeah, definitely. And
yes. So, Kenneth, thank you for having me. This was awesome. And I loved Howie since the first time I met him. I was like, who's this guy? Let me ask questions. But this is what it's about. Just connecting, sharing our story, building that relationship. And you find that you are similar, everybody has something that they can kind of relate to with each other. And you just never know who you could touch, who you can inspire with all of our stories, so this is special. Anytime I get on something like this, it's just I really take it in and I'm in the moment. Because it is special. And like you said, Howie, it's you just got to appreciate life, period. Like that is the greatest joy is life.
Yep.
That period, and I think we take that for granted, and I think that we don't appreciate those little things that make life.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it is all those, it's a lot of little things. Not just the big moments are few and far between, but it's
and you guys introducing me to trail running, like, I ain't no trail runner, but I hiked. I went to actually Little Baldy not too long ago. And I did some hiking in the sequoias. And I understand the beauty, the nature, being out there. And I might, tap into some trail running. I'm not gonna say nothing else but that. So we're gonna say
it all starts with a seed planted,
It is. You planted a seed. You planted a seed.
Watch it grow. Watch it grow.
There's no rules. You do what you want to do, and that makes you happy. But it's nice to do, just like me running around the beach. It's something I don't do all the time. We're running through the cities, but it was a blast. It's fun to do different stuff and run with different people and have different conversations. It's I love all that stuff.
That's
it's great.
Good. So I'm waiting for you to come up with your book, Howie. And so definitely, let me know when you come out with your book. I'll be the first one to purchase a book.
One of the days, I hope. I've got a lot of ideas. I have a lot of photos that would love to have a home somewhere. But
there you go.
Just kind of reeling it in to figure out a focus. I was going to do a book on hard rock, but now
do a book on your life. That'd be great.
That'd be interesting.
I'd
like to have a book that includes like everyone's lives. Like you can have stuff on me, but I want to know about other people too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that'd be great. It's possible. So looking forward to it. Well, again, thank you, seeing Howie, and thank you, Live Run Balance family, for joining me on another episode of the Live Run Balance show, living a life beyond the boundary that you set on yourself. And listen to Howie's story. He pushed against all the boundaries, you know, from different jobs, from I'm gonna talk about his marriage. That's a whole nother story. But different jobs, you know, and just okay, yeah. That's another story. That's a whole nother story, a whole nother book. But yeah, he put together the boundaries. He overcame, he conquered, and now we know the Howie that he is today. Who we know him as is. The world renowned photographer and the trail running community. So
Yeah.
yes. So thank you for that. And family, until next time.